All right, so welcome to today's presentation on managing conflict and team dysfunction. This is part of our small business series here at the Lancaster Chamber. For those of you who don't know me or my face, my name is Abby Williams. I am the Programs and Events Coordinator at the Chamber, and I also manage our small business series. We're really excited for this series. It's something new we launched this year and hope to continue into next year. And I want to thank our sponsor, PSECU. They're allowing us to bring you these awesome speakers like Julie for free and allow you to have these resources. So I want to thank them. I also want to thank SCORE. They've partnered with us on a lot of these, and they're also partnering today. So Catherine, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about SCORE.
Thanks. Hi all, my name is Kathy Bonser, and as the education chair, I've been working closely with Abby on this small business series throughout the year to bring various topics that are important to all of you. It's a great partnership for us because it reaches the small business community, which is key to the focus of SCORE's mission. So by extending our reach, partnering with organizations like the Lancaster Chamber, we can better serve small businesses in our communities, bringing them relevant topics to help you all be successful with your businesses. I want to mention that SCORE is here to help any small business, whether it's a startup concept or an existing business. We are here to help you achieve your business dreams and to achieve your business objectives. So please feel free to reach out to us at lancaster.score.org and request a mentor if you don't have one today. I'm pleased now to be able to introduce Julie Poland, a cool colleague of mine who's here from Proactive Leadership Group to talk about a topic important to all of you and one you've requested on managing conflict. So Julie, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kathy. It's great to be with you here. I just wanted to let you know that as by way of intro, I've been working with small businesses as a volunteer for SCORE, but also via Proactive Leadership Group for 30 years since I was 12. And over that time, it's been kind of my approach to a business that culture is key. You can have a great strategy, but if the environment people are working in is demotivating rather than motivating, in some extreme instances, toxic, and that becomes costly for the business, as well as no fun even for the owner. So I like when people have fun. This conflict topic was really interesting to me because that's one of the preventers of fun I found in many of my client companies. So here we go. So what is it about conflict? The challenge in talking about conflict and team dysfunction is that it has a multitude of potential sources. And since it has a multitude of potential sources, it also has a multitude of potential fixes. So my goal today is to help to cover what are some of the predominant sources of conflict. In some cases, having insight on what it is, being able to put a name on it, can actually help you deal with it just at the out of the gate. But also we'll be talking about a few tools on helping you navigate through conflict situations. Specifically, a lot of our time is going to be spent on the owner and the owner's key team that needs to interact on a daily basis, regular basis, in order to help the everyday nuts and bolts get done. What's also important in this, just by way of context, I guess, is to tell you a little bit more about me. I'm from Central Pennsylvania originally. I was raised a Brethren girl. So if any of you are familiar with Church of the Brethren, we're pacifists. Back in the Vietnam era, we didn't believe in going to war. So a lot of people in my denomination were conscientious objectors and went and volunteered in villages and helped with mental health and other alternative forms of service. So to say that conflict can be a loaded issue for me, from my upbringing, absolutely. So let's just say I'm a fellow journeyer. But what that context did for me is it helped me become very sensitized, if you will, to the more subtle signals that are happening when a conflict is about to break out, and even notice what other people might not be noticing. Like a colleague of mine who said to me one day, Julie, I need you to understand that I only get a piece of information if you put it on a 2x4 and hit me over the head with it. So there are a lot of ranges of tolerance for conflict. There is no black and white where this is concerned. It's all a matter of shades of gray. So here's the stuff we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about people's perceptions about conflict, some types of it, some sources or causes. We're going to be talking about some places where conflict is essential to a successful outcome. We're going to be talking about some tools for engaging in healthy conflict, how to get through to the other side, and then we'll be finishing up with kind of the ultimate question for you as you walk away from this webinar and back into the real world. So first, perceptions of conflict. You know, you say the word, it sounds like a bad thing. The word conflict brings emotional reactions to people's minds. You think about the couple who are just so frustrated with one another, they can't even communicate, they're turning their back to one another, and it's really a difficult pit for them to get out of. This can work on teams as well, because you accumulate habits of interacting with one another. So a simple word or simple phrase can trigger somebody's what you might perceive to be outsized reaction to something that you didn't even mean anything by. Here's an example with the husband and wife example. The husband says, "My coffee's cold." The wife responds, "You always expect me to wait on you." Whether the husband actually meant that meta message, the big message behind the message or not, that's what the wife heard, and the conflict ensues. Another perception of conflict is that it's going to result in somebody getting a punch in the nose, either figuratively or literally, as in the case of this guy. I have to use this picture over and over just because it cracks me up. And then the third area of third perception of conflict is it's a power struggle. And sometimes what comes out in conflict situations is people's baggage about authority figures and who's got the biggest clout in an organization or in a situation. So there's all this other stuff that's going on in all these three situations. There's all this stuff that's going on aside from the actual content of what the conflict is about, whatever that conflict might be. So some types of conflict. We're going to go through a couple of these in a little bit more detail. First is personality-based. Second is values-based. Third is priority or priorities-based. So I don't know if you've done any of the personality assessments. There's Myers-Briggs, there's DISC, there's Strength Finders. There are a number of different types of, some people are colors, some people are animals. Just depends what diagnostic you use. So for the sake of simplicity and a fairly broad audience for this particular one, this example is based on DISC. I use this with teams all the time, and it really helps team members gain insights on one another. So two factors here in personality conflicts. One might be fast versus slow. Another might be task focused versus people focused. Now, if I'm fast and you're slow, I'm frustrated because I just want the bottom line. I just want the high points. I don't want a story. I don't want to wait a week if I can have the data today. So just because of our behavioral style, there's automatically going to be a rub. There's automatically going to be the potential for conflict. And then task versus people focused. You know, the very task driven people are the ones that like to check things off on the list. And if somebody has to work overtime, or if somebody needs to have their feelings hurt in order to get stuff done, the task is predominant. The other crowd, the people-focused crowd, if you take that to an extreme, they can frustrate the task person because they want to celebrate birthdays. They want to do happy hour with the department. They want to consider feelings. Now, if you take all these 4 different variables, you are all a mix of all of them. So there's not a good guy, there's not a bad guy, there's not one you don't want to be, there's not one you do want to be. Just understand that there are these variables. When I've used this inventory with clients, what has happened was individuals, once they were able to put a name on why this person got under their skin, they could almost laugh it off. Not that they're not taking the person seriously, but it puts the behavioral differences into perspective. So if you start to notice, why is it that you're having a reaction, if you're getting triggered by this person, sometimes that can help you put it in its proper context and not be the centerpiece of what you're noticing about the interaction. A second source of potential conflict is values conflicts. Every individual has different things that they think are important. And if we're all sitting around a boardroom table together, I might be really focused on what's the financial return in this decision, or how does this give us a competitive win? You might just want to go home so that you can spend time with your kids, work in your yard. You're focused on harmony and ecology. I'm focused on the greenbacks. Some people are really motivated by what can we learn, going to workshops. Some people want to be different and have autonomy. Some people want to have authority. Some people like to follow rules. Some people like to break rules. And other people just want to look out for the best interests of everyone. Now, these values conflicts come up in a couple different ways. Sometimes they reveal themselves in a conversation by what somebody might say or not say when you're having some discussion about a particular issue. Your company might have outlined its core values. What are the rules of engagement that we agree upon within our organization? If you have not yet done that, do that. What are the really big non-negotiables in your organization that you expect everyone in the company to be in sync on? Like, our family comes first, or you might need to be concerned about contributing to the community. You might be concerned about keeping costs low. You might be concerned about other ways in which you contribute to the world as a company. Now, this isn't only important when you're in a meeting to understand what the values are. If there are behaviors that are way outside of core values in your organization, those aren't conflicts that you live with. If those are really core values, they're ones that you're either willing to take a hit financially as a company in order to abide by them, or you're willing to separate from an employee if they have violated those core values. Now, that's not every little thing. These should be the biggies. In addition, if you have core values for your company that have been outlined, they should also be a context for how you bring people onto your team. You can train people in the skills that they need to be effective in your organization. Now, you might buy those skills also. Get somebody who's already ready, who has a licensure or a degree or something like that. But if you have to choose, pick somebody whose values align with your company and train them on their skills. It's very difficult to bring somebody into your organization, have them perform consistently if they are not in alignment with the core things that your organization believes in. So that's core values. Then there are the priority conflicts. And this is, I think, where a lot of conflicts come up with in meetings. It's what's important. Now, you might even have these priority conflicts inside yourself. Do I want to get a good night's sleep and roll over for another 10 or 20 or 30 minutes in the morning? Is it important to be there exactly at the crack of when the workday starts, or get there early? Or maybe, you can't go to the office unless you've first gone to Starbucks or Dunkin' or whatever your preferred coffee stop of the morning is. So if we have those inside ourselves, imagine when you multiply that by all the people around the room. Again, within a company, if those priorities are outlined, then it becomes less of a source of conflict because everybody knows where you're headed. Now, you may have to negotiate that on the way to defining what they are, either for this month or for this quarter or for this year or beyond. But once you know, then that helps the choosing every day in the little decisions people have to make, makes the choosing easier because they understand what the priorities are, the umbrellas under which they have to keep their actions in order to do effective work. So what happens when you're on a leadership team? Some of you might be familiar with an author named Patrick Lencioni. He's one of my personal faves. I've read a bunch of his books, but excuse me, one of the ones that's very relevant to this conversation today is called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And the premise behind this book is if your goal is to see results in your company from your team, you have to go through a whole bunch of building stages in order to get there. The foundation for everything is trust. And notice the very second thing that you must go through. Remember I was saying earlier, we're going to talk a little bit about beneficial conflict. You have to go through conflict to get to commitment, and commitment to get to accountability, and then through accountability to get results. So the conflict thing, the goal behind the conflict stage is disagree and then commit. Disagree and then commit. You know, I made reference to my brethren roots at the beginning, but I say to people sometimes you need to create space for something other than the church answers. When you're sitting in a meeting and someone asks a question, a lot of times the people around the table kind of have an idea of what the boss is looking for, and sometimes they'll say it, or sometimes they'll just nod their head. Well, there are a couple problems with that. One problem with that is I may have information that's really important to the group that I have not yet shared, and people wouldn't be nodding their heads if they knew that there was some information that would absolutely change that from a nod to a shake, from a yes to a no. The other thing is I may internally disagree, but if because I'm feeling pressure or some other reason, I'm nodding my head because it's easier than having conflict. We go through all the process. We're supposedly making a commitment. Those commitments are hollow. And if my commitment is hollow, that means I'm not truly going to be accountable. It means I'm not truly going to push through the obstacles. As a matter of fact, if I haven't allowed conflict to emerge onto that conference table and actually really talked it through, hash it out, then that means I may have internally a win for myself in seeing the whole thing blow up. Now, I would love to tell you that that never happens in the real world, but I will tell you it happens more often than not in what I've observed on leadership teams. If the culture is really solid, and we'll get into how you make that solid in a second, it doesn't happen so much. But your strategy wins or fails based on this leadership team behavior and the ability to have real discussion, including disagreement, and then getting on to saying, okay, we agree, we're moving forward. Doesn't mean that nobody has any reservations ever, that everyone's got to turn into Pollyanna and optimists and disregard that there might be warts on this idea. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that the group as a whole has come to the conclusion that the benefits of the outcome are more important or greater than the obstacles or the risks. So it's just basically a cost benefit analysis. The cost might not be money, but it's a cost benefit analysis. So let's talk a little bit more about culture and how this works. So the foundation of that whole pyramid on the prior slide was trust, right? We could do at least an hour-long conversation just on the topic of trust. Trust enables there to be healthy disagreement. So I used the example a minute ago of somebody that has information that somebody doesn't know. It may be that in a conversation, I'm feeling threatened by one of the choices that are being laid on the table because that impacts my department negatively. Heck, it may impact my job negatively. My tenure with the company might be at risk as a result of some of the things that are being discussed around this table. I have to be able to give something other than the church answer. I have to be able to say, you know what, this makes me feel uncomfortable because I've got a lot riding on this. I need to be able to say that. Does that happen in a political environment that's in a company? Doesn't always. So how do you go about getting that kind of environment where people are willing to speak up? Well, oftentimes it's you or the leader, or you, the leader, as the case may be, who has to go first. Ultimately, trust is a game of chicken. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and be vulnerable, risk getting tossed around a little bit in order to help that happen. When you are the person extending trust, say you're an employer and you've just hired people, you're training people, that also relates to having confidence in their decision making. In small business, this is a slight rabbit trail, but I want to come back. I'll come back to this in a second. The biggest issue with owners feeling burdened is not being willing to delegate, which means they don't necessarily trust the work output that's going to be happening by somebody to whom they could delegate. They don't want to have conflicts in the future about something the person didn't do right. So rather than train them thoroughly, because there's not time for that, all hands on deck, we're down because of COVID or because of staff shortages. We're trying to keep our expenses lean, so we're staffed as lean as we can be. So they don't delegate, they do it themselves. That's all part and parcel to this avoiding of conflict. Well, it's going to be in the open or it's going to be underground. It's one of those pay me now or pay me later kind of deals. And oftentimes, the longer that conflict avoidance is going on, the stronger the conflict gets underground. So that when it does come out, there's a whole bunch of other emotional baggage that comes with it. So dealing with stuff right away, even if I have to say to you, look, I have a serious issue with that action you just took. I disagree with it. Notice I did not say right or wrong. I said I disagree with it, neutral language, because this. If I say that and you don't like what you're hearing from me, at least you're going to respect the fact that you are hearing it from me, rather than right keeping a secret and worse, telling it to someone else, rather than talking to you directly about it, because you're the person that can actually do something to fix it. So when we're trying to figure out conflict prevention, conflict management, rather than conflict avoidance, we can really benefit ourselves by having sound processes in place. We'll talk a little bit about process in more detail. First, meeting rhythms. In my experience over the years, one of the biggest contributors to conflict is lack of information. There's the growth of the informal communication network, otherwise known as river control or the grapevine, right? So if I don't really know what's going on, and I want to know what's going on, because everybody wants control of their own work environment, right? if I don't know what's going on, I might start supposing what I think might be going on. And I might be asking someone else what's going on.
Hey, Julie.
Yes.
So your sound went funny. I don't know if there's a way to like maybe turn it off, turn it back on. It sounds, in my best description, like robotic. I don't know if that's, I think other people are hearing it. If not, it could just be on my end, but I do think somebody put that. There we go.
Okay. Was that better?
Oh, there we go. That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let me try to go back to the other slide.
Okay.
Did it return? Is it better now?
Yeah, you sound good. That was
Okay.
weird, but you're good.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden I saw that there was something in the chat. I don't know whether that made a difference or what, but anyway.
There we go.
So meeting rhythms in general, more, I know you're not going to like my saying this, more meetings are better than less meetings if they are productive. They don't need to be long, but regular communication about the thing that affects people every day. With my clients, I'm usually working with a rhythm for the senior team of once a year, we get together to update their plan. Quarterly, that same team gets together to see how they're doing on their plan. Then in between those quarterlies, they are probably also, sometimes with me, sometimes not, meeting to talk about current issues that are affecting the priorities they've set for the quarter or set for the year. And probably the number one recommendation that I make, like the first thing I recommend people do, is they have a daily huddle of some sort. They determine what the content of that huddle needs to be based on what the priorities are in the company. It might be what's our scheduling. It might be what do our clients need. It might be where's our production line down. The point of the huddle is to be standing up for 10, maybe 15 minutes at the outside. You don't solve problems there. You identify any obstacles there so that leadership can help get that straightened out outside of the huddle when everybody breaks and goes on to their thing. You may think that every day is too often to meet. I can tell you from the clients that have implemented it, I've had pretty much universal, while I wish we had done this before. It increases empathy with the workload that other people have. You know, this whole conflict prevention thing. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but in a lot of organizations, when people are having a rough day, or even when they've messed up, large or small, this is when asked where the problem is, they do this salute where they're pointing to everyone but themselves. That's easier to do when you don't really know and really don't identify with the people that you're working with. If part of your meeting rhythm is to do a daily huddle, you start to understand what other people have on their plate, and they start to understand just how crazed your days are also. So that helps to build bridges. And in terms of one of my clients along the way, even if at first they're rickety bridges, it starts to build bridges between colleagues. For these meetings, my second bullet here is about having agendas. You need to know what is going to be covered, and it's helpful if people know what the agenda is before they come to the meeting so they can come prepared. We were talking about disagreement and conflict in meetings. Some of that conflict arises when people don't have the data and because they didn't have a chance to assemble it or bring it to the meeting. So having agendas also keeps it from getting out of control. And some agendas you'll even attach timelines to. So if you've got 15 minutes for a discussion on issue X, then that keeps things from winding in and ramping up into a higher intensity emotional conversation. Sometimes it helps to have a facilitator, someone whose job is to mind the process and not worry about the content of what's being talked about. Even if you're the top person in the company, think about this for a second. You have authority over everybody else that's in that room if you're the business owner. So you might be the kindest, gentlest guy or gal out there, the most open, but because you have that rank in your organization, people are going to be less likely to give you the unvarnished truth, even, or I should say, especially if they think it's going to make them look bad, or if they think they can fix it. So you don't really need to know, it'll just be handled behind the scenes. The facilitator is there to make sure that you don't run away with the agenda and shut people down unintentionally or intentionally. They can also help to manage your timeline. And they can help make sure that kind of the group dynamic is working in a productive way that can keep disagreement as it is, a discussion of the facts, rather than descending into an unproductive conflict. Ground rules are also important, especially with bigger meetings that you're going to be there for a while. It can be things like leave your titles at the door, leave your egos outside the room, no personal attacks. We're talking about situations. We want to focus on process, not people. There might be a number of them. Leave your cell phones at your desk. You'll be on time for this meeting, or put a quarter in the cup. And the lateness money goes toward pizza or some other treat for the group. You may want to have a decision-making process. By the way, unless you're on some kind of board setting where you have to have a recorded who was for and who was against, I strongly recommend against voting when it comes to making decisions on your team around the conference table. The reason why, remember I was saying earlier, if somebody has a disagreement and they let it go underground, if you vote and you're one of the people that voted against whatever initiative has passed, that means you have a built-in win for it not to work. And that never works to the advantage of the group, never works to the advantage of the organization. So again, disagree, then commit. Now, there are those that would say, I almost hate to bring this up, but I got to put it on the table. There are those that would say disagree, then commit is easier for men than it is for women. I don't know. There are some studies. Dr. Deborah Tannen is one that studies gender differences in communication. And she would say that because of the social construct between women, things become social pecking orders, and there's a lot more underground jockeying, no, not jockeying for position, that's guys. They're always seeking higher status and helping somebody else reduce their status. But for women, it's more about who's the in group, who's the out group, who's the social outcast versus who's the social butterfly. So disagreeing then committing may be harder for some people than it is for others. You want to be sure, to the extent possible, though, that everyone walks out the room with a shared understanding, and that you're not having a meeting after the other meeting to discuss the other meeting. So I'd like to talk for a few minutes about one of my other favorites, Susan Scott, who wrote a book called Fierce Conversations. She says the most important conversations are the ones we are not having. This gets to the whole conflict avoidance thing. We sometimes don't talk about the most important issues, the ones that are kind of the overlay that are covering everything else. Fear of conflict is one of the reasons. Fear of starting something you might not want to finish, or where you don't know where it's going to wind up. Some people don't have those conversations because they don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. So they edit themselves. Unfortunately, that underlying whatever it is doesn't go away just because it hasn't gotten talked about. And it usually doesn't shrink either. If anything, it stays the same or it grows. It becomes a bigger obstacle. So according to Susan Scott, this is how you have fierce conversations. First principle is that you interrogate the truth. You seek to provoke learning. Tackle your toughest challenges and tackle them first if you can. Seek to enrich relationships. So we're going to talk about a couple of the tools that Susan Scott uses in meetings. I've used both of these. They've actually been really interesting in practice. The first one is called having a beach ball meeting.
Hey, Julie.
Yes.
Your sound went funky again. I don't know why it keeps doing that.
Let me change the slide. Did it change when I changed my slide?
It did not.
It's still funky. And it's still funky?
It is.
All right, let me try something else. Does that make it any better?
It doesn't.
Are you still there?
Oh, there you are.
It's there. Okay. So I changed earbuds. Maybe that helps. Okay, so the beach ball meeting. The beach ball is kind of a metaphor for the beach ball itself is the world, in the world of your company. And let's just say the green stripe on the beach ball is the finance people. The yellow stripe on the beach ball is the operations people. The blue is distribution, and the orange is marketing. The purpose of the beach ball conversation is to acknowledge that when you're in a cross-functional group, each department is going to have its own lens that it sees the world through. Financial people are going to see the world in financial terms. Marketing people are going to see things in market with a marketing lens. Operations is going to be thinking about how can we get this done. Distribution is going to be thinking about similar lines. So the point of the beach ball conversation is to have each of those different functional perspectives be brought into the conversation in an overt way. So, Harry, how does that impact us from a finance standpoint? And let Harry have the opportunity to talk about how he sees it. Because chances are nobody's got dibs on the outcome. Everybody is going to be impacted. It's sort of like, oh, you could poke the beach ball and have the same thing happen. But I'm going to mix my metaphors. We're going to talk about Jell-O for a second. If you poke a chunk of molded Jell-O on one side, that's not limited to just that spot on the Jell-O mold. The whole Jell-O starts to shake. Same thing with the beach ball. These systems are interconnected. So you need to know what systems are impacted, how they're impacted, so then you have complete information with which to make your decision. Some of the unproductive conflict starts when people have unequal amounts of information. The other premise that she works from is a concept called mineral rights. So think about somebody who's panning for gold for a second. They find a nugget, bingo. They take that nugget out of the pan. They're operating in shallow water. It takes some time. They might get some hits, but they move on then to the next spot, the next scoop that they do out of the water to try and find some other good nuggets. On the other hand, if instead of settling for those nuggets, they would start to dig, they might be able to find a whole vein. The purpose of mineral rights is to say, look, there's probably more to it than just this symptom. Let's ask more questions. Let's really discuss what are the implications? What are the causes? What do you think the root cause might be? Are there things that are repeating themselves that you're having to deal with over and over again? Are there things that could be done but have not been done? Why? What was the thought process? Now, I'm sure that you can understand that
tone can be really important in this mineral rights conversation. As tone can be real important in the beach ball conversation we talked about before. Because, I might think that marketing people are superficial if I work in operations. Or I might think that finance people are a bunch of buzzkills because they don't want to give me any budget. Same goes for mineral rights. If you have established trust in your organization, which remember that means being vulnerable, that means owning up to your own mistakes. If you've made a boo-boo, even if you're the top guy or gal in the company, if you've got that trust environment, you can ask these questions without them sounding accusatory. Let's talk about this situation, problem C that you had last week. Can you tell us what happened? What did you think was going to happen? Who was involved? The idea is that you did. So you're trying to get to the root, trying to have that information that one person might be the only one that knows firsthand to share it with the group. That prevents rumor control, that prevents the grapevine from going crazy. I mentioned implications a second ago, and I just want to talk about balance in your implications. So if, let's just say you have a goal you want to achieve or a problem you want to solve, one of the things that helps to determine whether this is a big deal and we need to be on it, not tomorrow, but this afternoon, as soon as we're done with the webinar, it deals with what are the ramifications for customers? What are the ramifications for finances? What are the ramifications for our ability to manage? And what are the ramifications toward our ability to grow and innovate in our company? There's an upside and there's a downside. Some of us are very adept at thinking about what are the negative consequences. We horribilize everything. There are others of us that skate along the surface and assume things are going to work out on the end. If you look at the opportunity on the upside and the biggest risks on the downside, your total value of fixing that problem is actually both of those together. The upside might be bigger, the downside might be bigger, but it doesn't matter. Both the upside and the downside matter. So let me think of a good example to give you. I'm going off script here for a second because this is kind of an important concept. So let's say I decide that I'm going to increase my prices by 15%. So what's the impact on my customers? The impact on my customers is going to have to pay more money. What's the impact on my finances? I'm going to get more money, right? What's the impact on my ability to manage? Holy cow, I've got to change all the prices and all my price guidelines. I've got to do visits to all the customers and let them know that everything's coming up, all that kind of stuff. What impact does it have on my ability to grow and innovate? Well, if I have that extra 15%, I'm going to be able to invest that in research and development that helps our company grow. So upside and downside, implications, rewards and consequences, however you want to say it, that's all part of what can come out from having a really thorough mineral rights conversation. This is a kind of one of the last tools that I want to share with you. This is called bending emotional energy. I'd like to talk about this because this deals with more one-on-one, but you can also talk in this light if you're being a mediator between two people that are having a conflict with one another. Principle number one of bending emotional energy. Now, this is when somebody's ticked off. They are feeling emotional. They're mad. We're not talking about conflict in theory. We're talking about the conflict is right in front of you at that moment. Let them get all their lightning out. Let them talk. Just quiet and let them talk. Once they've exhausted themselves talking out what they wanted to get out, repeat it back to them as close to their words as you can. Then say, that's what you said. Is that what you meant? Now, sometimes they will say, doggone it, yes, that's what I meant. Sometimes they'll backpedal when they realize how harshly they communicated. Either way, your next move is to say, I want to work through this with you, and I believe we can. So you're talking about how you're willing to extend yourself to resolve this, and you're sharing a positive view about what you think the outcome can be. Next is to tell them the facts of what you can and cannot do. It may be that they're upset about something that's totally outside your purview, something that is beyond regulations, you cannot do it. Or there might be some accommodation, some middle ground that you can find. The thing is, to help bend their energy, your spirit must be unbending, meaning that number 3 and 4 become really important. You need to be intentional about wanting to work through it with them and in belief that you can get through it, and tell them the facts of what you can and cannot do. That can help to diffuse something that starts out being quite intense and emotional, and help bring it to a place where you have something actionable that you can both feel good about. Excuse me. In general, what you want to look for in conflicts is find some common ground, whether it's shared goals, and those are priorities like we talked about earlier, shared values. Find the places where you agree and use that to move forward. Common ground. Last, and man, I hope this doesn't sound preachy, but this truly is the question that changes everything. If your organization is going through storming phase and it just seems like every day is another headache, there will come a time when that downhill run turns the corner and you start finding new ways of interacting. You find new ways of doing things. Some might work, some might not, but at least you're not stuck anymore. Now, that question that helps you turn the tide is, okay, all things being as they are, what can I do to make things better? What can I do to make things better? Because you and I both know you're the only person who can control what you do, and you can't control what anybody else does. So that look in the mirror is sometimes not pretty, and it's sometimes not easy. So to recap, we talked a little bit about perceptions about conflict. We talked about the interpersonal values and priorities, those sources that come just because we're all people. We talked about trust and conflict, working toward results, and how we need trust, we need healthy conflict in order to get commitment, and then accountability, and then results. We talked about some of the pieces of process that can help you keep conflict at a productive level. We talked about beach ball meetings and mineral rights as specific examples of what you can do within a meeting to help make sure the conversation is productive. One-on-one, we just talked about bending lightning. Hear them out, say it back, ask them if that's what they meant, express a willingness to work together in order to get a resolution. Seeking common ground, and the ultimate question. So that's where we stop for today. That's what I've got. This is the final question, and I want you to walk away with this in your mind. If you're in conflict situations right now, this is where it all starts. And if you want more information, here's my email, here's my phone number. Please feel free to reach out. I'm easier to catch by email, actually. And we do a complimentary organizational health assessment and strategy session, if that's something that would be helpful to you in your business. So thank you for joining us for the webinar today. So let's just check here. Yes, there was a question. Will the presentation be available afterwards? Yes, it will be. It will be available afterwards, and a recording will be distributed also. Abby, any other questions?
So we're going to give everybody a little bit just to, if they got to type their questions. But I want to thank you, Julie. I love this presentation. And like she said, that the recording will be available as well as the presentation Julie used. I will send that out to everyone probably this afternoon, so you can look for it then. Because I know there were a couple people that emailed that had issues jumping on. So you'll be able to go through and watch this at your own pace. But one thing that I will kick us off with questions while everybody is typing is about beach ball meetings. So how do you recommend implementing something? Because you mentioned you recommended them daily, and I have worked in an organization where not everybody was so thrilled about it. They viewed it as a waste of time. So how would you recommend changing the mindset around beach ball meetings? Because I personally love to hear where everyone was at, with what they were doing on a day-to-day basis, but how do you change everyone else's mindsets?
Well, the huddle and the beach ball meetings are very different. You know, the huddle, everybody's kind of just doing a quick update. And it may be that the team decides they want to devote the huddle to a specific thing. Like if it's a sales organization, how was your yesterday? How many contacts? What was your activity? What were your results? Like in a car dealership or something like that. In a beach ball meeting, rather than necessarily having the department talk about what they're working on, the beach ball meeting would be taking an issue like, for instance, we're contemplating moving our office. Okay, finance guys, you know, thoughts about it from a finance perspective. Marketing guys, what would your concerns be? So you're actually applying their perspectives to a certain issue versus them talking about them. So it's kind of acknowledging that they're coming at any issue from different perspectives.
Okay. So somebody asked in the chat, sorry, I just lost it. Okay. How does resolving conflicts differ between work situations versus personal groups?
Well, ultimately in work situations, there is power, which is the interpersonal stuff, and then there's authority. So ultimately in work situations, the buck stops with someone. Personal situations, the big deal is that our personal situations are always under negotiation, whether it's you and your kids, you and your spouse, you and your parents, you and your neighbors. So every interaction is really a new opportunity to create, reinforce, or change in a positive way the kind of relationship you have with them. I also would just say that although in business, you're going to find emotional reactions just because people are emotional creatures. They don't always make decisions based on information. They want a rationale that's information based, but they're going to make decisions based on their feelings. It's even more feelings based when you get outside, because you're going to have, you know, well, I'm your mother. Well, I'm your brother, and I can tell you because I'm your older brother. All that other junk on top of the actual situation.
All right, so somebody else asked, this kind of goes directly to dealing with more permanent members of management that may not have the best management style. So how do you deal with somebody who's a key and permanent member of management that displays some narcissistic tendencies? And these are all anonymous. So if you guys have these questions, please feel free to ask back and to share any names. They are very anonymous.
Sure. Well, I would say, welcome to corporate America. Here's the challenge when you're talking with senior leadership, and that's mostly who I'm dealing with on a daily basis. People have been rewarded for the things that they've done over the years. And in some instances, I mean, the culture starts with the CEO, with the president of that company. What they are willing to tolerate, you know, what gets rewarded gets repeated. So if one is the leader of that individual that has some destructive behaviors, that's incumbent upon the CEO to deal with it. if they want to have that kind of a culture. Now, how to go about that? There's a lot of vocabulary that can be used. And I don't know if you're readers out there, there's a really good book called Multipliers by a woman named Liz Wiseman. Multipliers is about how to get the best brain power out of your staff. And we can do a whole thing on that actually, but it relates to some of the unintentional diminisher behaviors that people do. Liz Wiseman's Multiplier site actually has a little test you can take for free, really quick. And that has some tools on it that might be really useful in a very kind of narrow and micro, what does this person do on a regular basis that drives everybody else nuts?
I did find that website while you were speaking, so I will link it in the follow-up email so you guys can check out that book as well as the website. I think that would also, it sounds like a great resource, so I will make sure to include that. Someone else just put in the chat, as an employee, how do you help a director from over-explaining things? An example is we all understand the topic, we want to move on, but they keep talking about it. So how do you keep them from over-explaining a topic that everyone understands?
Trying to manage up. You know what? That is a constant challenge. As a matter of fact, over the years, I've worked with senior teams, I've worked with middle managers, and I've worked with frontline leaders. And in all cases, it's the other place where the issue is. I know you're taking us through supervisory training, and these are the guys that need the help, the ones that are up the org chart. I would suggest thinking about what can we do, focused on action. Sometimes it helps to ask questions about, okay, what are some options? What are some options we would choose? How much should we prioritize this issue? I'd want to know, is this an issue that we thought was resolved but isn't? Is this an issue that keeps coming up and that's why he or she keeps talking about it? Because if it's something that keeps coming up and they keep talking about it and can't let it go, that means you've probably treated the symptom but not the disease. So you need to figure out the root cause. And there's another thing, I almost hate to say this, but some people love their problems too much to solve them. There is a category that's out there that kind of embraces the idea of not being accountable. And so everything is out there. And so again, bringing it back to what can we do? What are the alternatives? Let's pick one. Let's try this. Let's experiment. Could be a way to go at that.
All right. So I don't see any further questions in the chat. If you guys think of them, you can either email myself or Julie. The email is right there, and I'm sure she would be happy to answer them. But in the interest of time, I think we're going to wrap it up. So Julie, thank you so much for this presentation. I'm sure everyone got some nugget of information out of it. Like I said, I will send you the link that she mentioned to the book. I will also send you the recording of the presentation and the presentation afterwards, so you guys can go over it and watch it at your own time. But thank you again, Julie, and thank you, everyone. We are still hosting small business series throughout the rest of the year, so keep an eye on the calendar for more sessions to be announced. Have a great Tuesday, everyone. Thank you again, Julie.
Thank you.